and enthusiastic. Welcome to the Checkpoint Church podcast. This is a show that helps nerds, geeks, and gamers feel seen, connected, and spiritually supported because you don't have to explore faith alone. Today, we're going to be talking with author and pastor Joe Graves about faith dystopia, how we make sense of the madness in the world, and more. Looking forward to some good conversations today. I am Nerd Pastor Nate, a real-life nerd, a real-life pastor who finds Jesus in my favorite fandoms, and you have found yourself at the Checkpoint Church podcast. This is a church designed with nerds, geeks, and gamers in mind, and this is the show connecting all of the various communities and people and places from Discord to YouTube across the Checkpoint Church sphere into here. So we want you to be a part of this show. We want you to engage in the chat, hang out with us, ask questions, let us know what's going on in your day, and we will do the same. We'll get started with that in just a moment with what have you been watching, playing, and reading. But we have got a special guest, a first-time guest to the podcast today. And so I'm going to give Joe an opportunity to say a little bit more about himself and what he's going to be offering to us today. So take it away.
Hey, yeah, everyone. Joe Graves, United Methodist pastor, and in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm based in Ohio and grew up in Ohio most of my life, and or all my life, I should say. And I serve a church plant, author of The Progressive Planter through Abington, and then most recently released the collection of short stories, My Family and the End of Everything. I wear a lot of different hats. I'm really passionate about justice-oriented nonprofits, which also include creative art spaces. So I've helped start a few nonprofits that meet tangible needs. And then I also relaunched the Ohio Writers Association, where I serve as the president. Because of my experience in nonprofit development, I was able to provide that to a writers organization. And that's really where I get to live out some of my love for fiction and storytelling. So between the Ohio Writers Association and a few justice-oriented organizations, and then being a pastor and trying to write, it keeps me busy, and still try to have time for my wife and my son. And my son Finn, who probably would not want me talking about him, he's somewhere in the house, is like he's probably more of a nerd than me, and is going to be a phenomenal game designer someday. And at the age of 10, he's already put together a few games. So you'll have to watch out for Finn Graves. He's going to blow your mind someday.
That's a name to keep in the back pocket for sure. Love it. Well, it's super exciting. And like I said before we started streaming, I think everybody's got a little bit of nerd in them. We all nerd, geek, or geek out about things. And I think that any kind of game that we play is a game that is worth celebrating, that it exists and is something that brings us joy, as long as it brings us joy.
This,
I guess that would be
this is right here. This is can't hardly tell, but you might recognize it even from this distance. This is my brother's a phenomenal graphic designer, Visual Jams on Instagram, and he did for my birthday. He drew this. This is Link in the oh gosh, now the name's left me, but in the underworld, whatever
cool.
in Tears of the Kingdom. So that sort of really dark picture there. That's Zelda's one of my favorites, and his too.
Love it. Yeah. Well, Zelda, I think, is a great place for all of us to start. There's all these moments in people's lives where I feel like Zelda has been a lot of people's starting point. Like a lot of people started with like the NES. A lot of people started with Ocarina. A lot of people started with, I don't know if anybody started with Skyward Sword. They've got to be out there. Some people liked Skyward Sword the most, so maybe that's them. But I could think of a lot of those like moments where Breath of the Wild is probably somebody's favorite game for the first like Zelda. That was where they started and experienced it. And I love it. I think that's great.
I think Skyward Sword, I played Zelda before Skyward Sword, but I inherited an old Wii for my parents when, because everyone bought a Wii, and so then they stopped playing it, and I took it home to borrow it and never took it back, and then we ended up with Skyward Sword, and that was the first time I really played through a whole Zelda game. So yeah, that would be me.
You were the target audience there. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Skyward Sword's an interesting one for sure. It's one that is like, it very rarely feels like it's anybody's favorite, but everybody had their moment of playing it. But I'm glad to hear that it was the one that got you.
Well, if you start with it, it is a pretty great. I think it's a great game. It's got glimpses to everything that Breath of the Wild would be.
It
collecting
was
bugs and all of that.
the timeline game for sure. It was whenever I remember everybody really started talking about the Zelda timeline and the breaks in the system, and yeah, good stuff. We're gonna get started with what have you been watching, playing, and reading. So if you are in the chat, let us know. We're gonna start with what have we been watching, what has been on the TV or the mobile or the YouTube screen, whatever you've been getting into. I'll kick us off here. I have been watching through a couple of anime. I did finish watching Lazarus, which is the one from the Cowboy Bebop director, and I liked it well enough. I'm continuing my watch through season 2 of Freerun, which is fantastic. Loving the second season as much as the first. And then I finally started the live action One Piece season 2 over on Netflix, which is a good enough time. It is always funny to see them render the ridiculous characters from One Piece into live action, but they always do a pretty good job. And then I typically, sometimes I play Resident Evil, but more often than not, I end up watching them. And so this time I am watching through Resident Evil Requiem with one of my favorite YouTube Let's Player, Mars. So that's what I'm getting into. Joe, what have you been watching?
So I am working my way. I'm on season 7 of Star Trek: The Next Generation, and I've never watched it from start to finish. So this will be I've watched many episodes over the years, but I've been watching it from start to finish, and I'll be finishing up the season soon and the series soon, and then I'm going to move on to the Next Generation movies. I also restarted watching Silo, which is one of my favorite science fiction stories, dystopian more so. But I've been watching that with my son a little bit. Yeah,
Nice.
so that's what I'm watching right now.
Yeah, that was a hot topic. I remember Silo was one of the big ones that that blew up in this space too. I know Sneaky Pig was one of our community members that enjoyed watching it quite a bit. And yeah, Twyla mentions a friend has been educating me through the Next Generation and the TOS movies. So I feel like two areas that so many clergy people nerd out about that I am completely ignorant of. I have never really cared for Star Trek, not out of like disdain, but out of just a simple like lack of ever trying. The only ones I've ever seen were the new movies. I've never gone back and watched any of the old stuff and even given it an honest try. And then the other one is Firefly. Everybody always talks about Firefly, and I know it's coming back with like an animated series, and people's always like, it's the best representation of like Shepard or whatever. And I just have never gotten into either one of them. I don't know.
I love
why.
Firefly too.
Yeah, it's so popular.
Yeah.
Those are like two of the series that I feel like click really well with those that are in ministerial settings just because of their stories.
I like dystopian stuff, which Silo would fit into, but I like hopeful sci-fi as well, and I like to write in that space as well. And there isn't, so much. I don't know. Star Trek definitely fits into this category of where there's at least a little, like it's imagining a world that got better overall instead of worse, which is hopeful. But then yeah, it's just classic of dealing with hot topic issues in very compact ways, which is something that I really enjoy. But my probably my favorite dystopian hope-filled story would be Station 11, where it's like, okay, what does art look like in a dystopian environment? So, but yeah, any sort of like hope-filled dystopia or hope-filled science fiction, I'm usually a big fan of it. It gives, especially nowadays, it's just I need a little bit of hope wherever I can get it.
That is for sure. For sure. I find it interesting. So one of the questions that we had, I'm trying to remember, how was it phrased? I can't remember the question. I'll try to think of it another time, but there was some kind of distinction between sci-fi and something else that I contested, and I still kind of contest, but I can't remember what it is. Regardless, let's see if we have any other thoughts in here. We've got some folks watching Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which is always fun. The Amazing Digital Circus has their penultimate episode. I still have not seen it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Lizzie is watching The Office, so close to the end. Is that the first time watching The Office, Lizzie? That's a big deal if so. Love it. You might enjoy. I don't know how much you like high fantasy or fantasy settings, but a similar kind of vibe of it's not dystopian, but it is kind of nihilistic, which is the Freerun one that I'm watching. So it's an anime about an elf who is obviously going to live so much longer, and so she is a part of like
Oh yeah.
the all caps big hero adventure party. And then they all die and she keeps going. And so it's like, what happens whenever you
Mm,
keep living and how do you keep living? And her character is super fascinating. Similarly in like the ways of hope. But yeah, also makes me
yeah,
think of that.
absolutely. That's tough though. It's a good reminder that death isn't always bad. Sometimes it's a gift, but
Yeah.
that's a theme that you've seen in some of the science fiction or fantasy worlds of you know, if you
Hmm.
live forever, it's not always a gift. It can be, but
Yeah.
it definitely plays with this theme.
That plays really well into we can talk about what we've been playing recently, any games that we've been getting into. I have started playing Life is Strange Reunion, which is the latest one in that series. I'm loving it already. It's great to be back with Max and Chloe. I finished up Pocopia. Feel pretty good about that one, which is like the Minecraft but Pokemon game that came out not too long ago and took over everyone's lives. But the one that made me think of what you just said was Paranormacite, The Mermaid's Curse. This is a visual novel that's on your phone. The first game, the first Paranormacite was called like the Seven Curses of Hanjo. And it was following along with these curse stones that you could use to attack other people. It was very scary. Not very scary. It had some jump scares. The second game, really not scary, but totally plays with this theme of the like classic iteration of the mermaid is that if you eat a part of a mermaid, then you live forever. That's like one of the the fantasy tropes that goes along with mermaids. And so this is a real world setting where years and years and years ago there were mermaids in this one particular part of
Mhm.
Japan, and now they're trying to see what the secret is, see if they were real, see what the mystery is, and see if people can really live forever. And so spoilers, there are immortal people in this, and they do present like the interesting theme of they call it the 800-year immortal. So they're not actually immortal, but they live for 800 years, which is a very very long time. But they do play along with the thought of like, do are they happy in that? Would people be happy actually living forever? It talks about it a lot. So yeah, made me immediately think of that. This game went back and forth, and I think went to some really interesting places with it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a movie on Netflix. What was it? The gosh, it was like The Guard or something like that, where they can't die, but then one of the people gets locked in the ocean, and it's just torment to be forced to be alive.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But yeah.
What have you been getting up to in the playing world?
Well, I've been playing Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild again. I took a couple year hiatus from Zelda. Did Breath of the Wild, then Tears of the Kingdom. So now I'm going back to do Breath of the Wild, and yeah, it's been really enjoyable. About a month ago, I was playing Minecraft quite a bit. My son kept insisting that I give Minecraft a try. Never played it, and then I got addicted for a good month, every second playing it,
Yep.
until I built a monstrosity of a thing that was too big to destroy and too ugly to look at. And so I just that pushed me out of that hyper focus, I guess. I feel like I'm playing Geometry Dash. I don't know if anyone's familiar with this game,
Sure.
but I had never played it. But my son is playing it, and it's his hyper focus, and it's the topic of conversation, every conversation. So I feel like I'm playing that one,
Hmm.
but he loves that right now.
That's fun. Yeah, we call it. I've always called it the 2 week curse of Minecraft, where about a year will go by, and I'll be like, I should try Minecraft again, and I'll start playing it, and I will obsess over it for about 2 weeks, and then I'll burn out and I'll stop playing, and then a year will go by, and then I'll play it 2 weeks, nothing but that game, and then I'll stop.
No,
There
absolutely. And I'm
is something
worried. I
about
think
that.
I'm afraid to pick it back up because I really don't have time right now, and I feel like I have a little bit more self control around Breath of the Wild just because I've played it and beat it so many. I think I 100%ed it the first time, so it's like a little less. Anyways, yeah. Yeah, it was good times though.
Those are fun. Let's see what else folks have been getting into. Looks like Lizzie was playing Slay the Spire 2, which I do officially own now and have played exactly one run of. Very much enjoying it. Twyla is dancing back and forth between Wander Song, Rhythm Doctor, and then maybe some Half-Life Alyx screen share time. And I think I also saw Stardew. Yeah, Marlena has been playing some Stardew Valley. Lots of good games going around. As far as what I've been reading, those that have been around for a while know that I like to read too much. I read a lot of books all at once. A habit that I took with me from seminary is that I read one chapter out of 7 books every day. And that gets me a wide range of books, which I enjoy, but it does get harder and harder with lengthier books, one of which in particular I am breaking the rule with. So I'm reading Tom's Crossing, which is from the guy that did House of Leaves, Mark Danielewski or whatever his name is. This book is written in like the thickest, like what's the cowboy guy with the mustache? Sam something. It's written as if it's all spoken by him all the time, not just the like people speaking in the book, but also the narrator is speaking in that thick accent. And so it is such a look at how big this book is. This book is like, it's absurd. Actual length of it is absurd. It's so big. It's such a girthy book, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's really interesting. And I love House of Leaves, so I'm like, I want to understand what would have brought this person to write this book. And people online are like, masterpiece, the greatest book I've ever read. And so I'm like, why? I need to know. So. We'll see if I figure it out or not. But currently, I am reading as much of it as I can in one.
How far are you? How far are you with that one?
I am on page 309, which is barely even getting started. It is 1,228 pages.
Yeah, they say you don't really understand why a book's good till about halfway through. So
far, it's like it's a really fun mystery. It's like, long story short, there's these 2 kids who are these like, I don't know how to describe them. They're like cattle ranchers or like, but they're just kids who want to be that someday. And one of them dies right away and is like, if I ever die, if you ever see the horses out in this one particular paddock, I want you to go and set them free because they deserve to be free. And so the best friend lives up to his past friend's promise and tries to get the horses away. And then it's like the chaos that ensues from that point on. And everybody's lying and everybody's deceitful. And it's really interesting there. But I have to understand why it's so popular, and or at least popular amongst the people that have also read House of Leaves. The other books I'm reading right now, I mentioned earlier before the call that I'm reading Strange Buildings by Uketsu, which is fun if you like easy breezy mystery novels. Very fun. We're reading This Princess Kills Monsters is our current book club pick at Checkpoint, so I'm reading through that still. I am reading Joe's book, My Family and the End of Everything, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. And then I am reading through the Rachel Held Evans posthumous release, Braving the Truth. And so I'm enjoying that one a good bit. And then our previous book club pick, not book club, our book of the month pick was Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer, right? Yeah, John Mark Comer. And I have realized something funny about this book. I don't know if you have read it or not, Joe, but it is written in very much a style of Rob Bell. And he's talking about our attention economy and how we need to not be hurrying and paying attention. But then he writes like Rob Bell, and I just feel like there's some irony to these one sentences,
really short sentences,
8 words at a time, and it's like you really need to pay attention and be able to hold your attention. And then it's like writing in 8 words at a time. It's a fun little twist.
Yeah, like little tweets when that was a thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's what I've been getting into. How about yourself?
Well, with my book coming out, I had a lot of people receive advanced reader copies, and I just really gracious for people to do that. And I try to live under a principle where I don't ask people to do things I'm unwilling to do myself. So I've been trying to give back, and I've had a couple I'm on my third advanced reader copy book, which, by the way, friends, if you're looking for a way to read books for free, this is a great way to do it. And you own the book basically because they send you an e-copy. Book Sirens is the website that I'm familiar with, but there's other places. You get advanced copies, and I did one for a friend recently, and I really enjoyed the process because I struggle to pay attention. But when I with Book Sirens, there's like these deadlines where you have to finish it by a certain time to leave a review because you said you would. And they're like, if you don't finish it, it's fine. But if you don't finish too many books, then your account will look bad. I'm like, this is just the panic-inducing motivation I need to read. So it's been a good fit for me. So I'm doing two right now. One is from someone I just in a Facebook group called The Lives We Take. And it's just a dystopian adventure with mild romance about teleportation. The other one is kind of in the vein of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I try to write. I've tried to write some sort of absurdist comedy that's a genre that I would try to play around in a little bit. But that one's called Interior Design for Intergalactic Travelers, and it's a fun little adventure where it's fish out of water story, an alien coming to Earth with all these assumptions about what Earth should be like. I'd like to compare it probably. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but if people from other countries came to America expecting everyone to be like MAGA, and then they found people that weren't, they'd be like, "Oh, this is surprising. I thought everyone in America was a certain way." And that's how this alien's kind of experiencing the world. Like, "Oh, I thought everyone." We learned that Earthlings were X, Y, and Z, and you're much nicer than we thought you would be. So it's kind of a fun little way of examining the human condition and diversity and whatnot. So, those are some of the ones. I'm also reading Anne Lamott's new book on writing. Her and Neil Allen put out a book called Good Writing, 36 Ways to Improve Your Sentences. So I'm always a big fan of Anne Lamott, and that book just came out. And her book, Bird by Bird, is one of the great books on writing. So anyways, kind of slowly working my way through that.
Love it. Well, I always love a good book on writing by writers. Always good and fun. Let's see what we've got going on. Totally, I'm not reading much of anything right now. Twyla is reading in reference to a convention prep. Yeah. Not many of our readers actively going right now. That is okay. Hopefully we'll get some folks catching up with this Princess Kills Monsters, which is our current book club. And then I'll mention our next book club next month here in a little bit. We're going to transition out of watch, play, read time into a quick little ad for our March checkbox. So for those of you that don't know, we pivoted from a monthly checkbox to a quarterly one. So now we are doing our checkboxes in January, in April, so on and so forth. But in between, we do still have the option for premium checkboxes. And in addition to those premium checkboxes, we also have these things called Book of the Month, where you can add on a book to your checkbox to get delivered to you. This month's book is going to be Joe's book, which is right here. My Family and the End of Everything. So if you want to get a copy of this, then you should sign up for our checkbox. I'm going to make sure that everybody gets a copy that orders one there. It's really fun. And again, we'll be talking about it here in a little while. So there's an incentive for the March checkbox. February checkbox just got sent out not too long ago. And cool stuff. The other thing I will mention, another quick little ad, will be we do have our March clubs, our April clubs coming up. So if you'd like to join us, if you're looking for a group to watch an anime with, to read a book with, to play a game with, we do all three here at Checkpoint. And we do it every single month. So if you want to join our book club, anime club, or video game club, that is the perfect time to do that this week as we get started with the next round. The video game we're going to be playing is one called Rhythm Doctor. Which is a rhythm game, but the gimmick is instead of like Guitar Hero, whenever you used to have 5 buttons, this one you just got 1. The gimmicks happen around that. So you only actually have to press 1 button to the rhythm, but you want to make sure that you get it right. And as I understand it, this game does subvert expectations in some really fun ways. So if you like games that mess with your head and maybe even mess with your like hard drive a little bit, then this is the one for you. From what I understand, I would play it on a computer. I don't know if it's on platforms platforms, but definitely play this one on PC for the full experience. The book for April is going to be Where the Wild Flowers Grow. I don't know much about that one, but I'm looking forward to reading through it. And then the anime for April is going to be Mono Weekend Animation, which I believe is from the same people that did Laid Back Camp, I think. So if you enjoyed our experience with that, this is going to be cozy times for a good time. Yeah, Twilight, I am also excited to see. Jacob Geller just did a video essay not too long ago on Rhythm Doctor as one of the 4 games for the video essay, and I'm quite excited to find out more about it. And with that, let's get into a conversation with Joe about all things, anything beyond just what we've been watching, playing, and reading, into what's actually going on with you. So let's start at the beginning and at the end at the same time. So tell us about My Family and the End of Everything. Maybe like just a quick like elevator pitch to read it, and then I'd love to hear what inspired you to put this together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, My Family and End of Everything is what's called a novel in stories, and the best example I can give you that's most popular is World War Z. If anyone's read that, um, it's a novel in that all those stories take place in a particular universe, and they're not connected per se in World War Z, but they happen in chronological order, or they happen different places. So it's a collection of short stories that are connected. In my case, they follow a particular family. Really, what happened is I wrote a novel a while ago for fun, and then some friends read it and really liked it. Wanted to know when the next one was going to come out, and I was like, oh, I'm not doing this for real. I was just messing around. But it really kind of lit something in me, and it unlocked something. I've always loved stories. I used to produce short films, which if you search real hard on YouTube, you can find them, and they're real bad. But in college, I wrote and produced short films. And then I started writing a novel because I decided to stop investing in video equipment. And I was never really that great of a filmmaker, although I still do some video editing to this day. What was really freeing is that I'm not going to do video editing. I'm going to stop investing in video equipment, but I still love stories. So what story would I tell if I didn't have to produce it? Because that's the thing about stories when you're writing short films is I'm thinking, okay, who are my friends who could play in them? But what are the sites I can videotape for free? It's a no budget film. So the story is so restricted to things I can get for free: actors, sets, props, mostly young adults, because I didn't know very many older people who would act for free, you know. But when I set that aside, I said, well, I could tell any story. It could be literally anywhere. What story would I tell? And that's when I started writing stories in space, because I could never afford to shoot a film in space. But if you're writing, you can put it anywhere you want. So I wrote this novel. It was well received by some close friends. So I said, I kind of had a spiritual experience, and I really felt like I should invest in my writing. So I started writing short stories. Short stories are very popular in science fiction, of course, but they also are a really great way to improve your writing, because you can write them, people can read them relatively quickly, they give you feedback, you can improve. So I got involved in the Ohio Writers Association feedback groups. I now help facilitate and train facilitators for feedback, which I'm a big fan of. Getting good feedback on your stuff, that's how we improve in any craft. And so I started writing all these short stories. I got a few of them published, and then last year I had always kind of planned on putting all of the short stories together, because even though I got them published at various boutique places. I still own the rights to them. So I was going to put them together, but I was waiting on this one story to get rejected at all the places I was hoping it would get published in before I put it together and published them as a collection. And it got rejected at the final place, and that was fine. And so I wanted to put them together, and I began to realize that they were all written in the same universe, on purpose, and were really connected in a lot of ways. So that's where I began to edit them to form a novel and stories, and put it out there. So yeah, that's kind of the long version of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you said you wrote them in the same universe. Did you notice the through line as you were writing it, or was that very much like okay, let's figure out how to tie these things.
No, it's totally a figure out how to tie these things. So what I was trying to do was practice my writing for my novel, which I hope to submit to publishers next year, the same one I wrote a while ago. And I was really trying to hone the craft. So I was intentionally writing in the same sort of universe, and even included, and so they exist in the same universe. But then I was trying to figure out, how do I make it more compelling, and how do I tell an overarching story? In other words, from a writer's perspective, how do I make this interesting enough to make me want to edit it more?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the stories were done, but to put them into a collection, if I wasn't just going to put them into a collection as is, you know, just disparate stories, if I was going to try to tell a story with all of them, it needed to be interesting. And so I was just trying to find something that was compelling to me. And it naturally fell into place because, you know, obviously as a seminary grad, I'm very familiar with like Salvic families, you know, and so what's one of the themes? One of the subtle ties is this family that's passing on their faith. And so while faith shows up in a lot of the stories, sometimes it's a significant part, sometimes it's very subtle. It becomes a thread that pulls it together. And what does it mean for multiple generations of a family to carry a faith, which works really well because I'm trying to cover like 2,000 years of history. There aren't a lot of things that pass down 2,000 years. I mean, there aren't a lot of things that survive 2,000 years, but faith is one of them historically. And so that became sort of like an easy way to tie it together. And while in most of the stories had faith incorporated them already because of my own experience, the ones that didn't, I was able to include little mentions here and there to help create the suspension of disbelief, I think. And sometimes faith is the good guy, sometimes it's the bad guy, sometimes it's just in the background. But faith and family, so a family that's passing its faith down is kind of is where I landed. And I found that was really interesting and ultimately I think rewarding for the reader when you get to the end. There's just some really fun stuff that I do with that. I won't give it away, but usually people are happy when they get to the end. You know, like it's worth it. Which is not always the case for books. Like sometimes you get to the end and you're like, wow, that was a waste of time. But
well, yeah. I may have spoiled something for myself. I'm not the person, so I know there are some people that like go to the last page and read the last page before they get to the rest of the story. I'm not that type, but I did look and see there was like a genealogy at the end. And so I was like, oh, that's like, you know, appendix stuff. It'll be fine. And so I went ahead and read that. And I think the last sentence may have been a bit of a giveaway of one of the themes throughout it. And so I was like, okay, well, that's a spoiler for me, but that's all right. I still am on board. So yeah, I will give that warning.
Yeah, it's the genealogy probably shouldn't have included spoilers. So that's my bad.
No, it was great for what it's worth. But a future warning for any of our readers here that get the book with their checkbox, that is.
But the genealogy is a nice little, you know, I try to play with some themes that I enjoy. And this book has been read by people who are not religious. And for the most part, like one guy in particular, not religious, said he liked it. It was, some parts were more theological than he wanted, but it was fine. You know, like even he liked it. So I don't want it to come across as like a explicitly, I mean, there's spirituality in it, but it's not the only point. But the genealogy, of course, is a play on the biblical genealogies and the roles that characters play and how we tell our stories about our faith and stuff. So,
yeah. Well, you know, this is a quick aside, and then I'll get back to the point because I want to dive deeper into the spirituality of it all. But you made me think of it with genealogies and how they're a play of their own. I can remember, you know, the genealogies in the Gospels and how boring they always looked. And then as I've gotten older and boring myself, now I like see them and I'm like, oh, there's meat on the bone here. There's stuff to chew on here. I like talking about this now. So I don't know. I don't think I'll be able to convince my 7-year-old daughter that genealogies are cool yet, but I learned it, so maybe she'll learn it too.
I did a sermon series once, a couple times actually, but first time years ago about the women who show up in the genealogy, right. And the 4 women that are mentioned are just profound stories that involve taboo and often sexual promise, just the variety of like otherness that makes their stories compelling, and even more compelling because they're intentionally mentioned in the genealogy. So, like when I was putting the genealogy for the book together, I'm thinking, okay, it's genealogy is less, and this is how I feel about scripture in general. It's less about the stuff you would expect to be there, and it's more about what you wouldn't expect, and that's where the meaning comes from for me. And that's like how I interpret scripture. Like X, Y, and Z that bothers you in scripture, fine, but that's the normal part. Stands out. What's the part that's different? And that's the part where I find the greatest meaning. So then I was thinking about in my own genealogy for the science fiction family of who should I make sure that I include, type of thing.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
So back to spirituality in the book. So I experience a lot of stories. I play a lot of games. I read a lot of books. I do a lot of my own experiencing of storytellers, and I find that it's more often than not religion and spirituality show up than they don't. Like I find that that is the trope that keeps on giving, and the area of exploration that is the most compelling. But that being said, I think it's rarer that you find somebody doing that on purpose, if that makes any sense. Like I think often people that include spiritual themes in their books, it's not coming from a spiritually optimistic or a spiritually forward storyteller. The person actually presenting it is not in that background. Like you have the occasional like space sci-fi stuff from C.S. Lewis, right? Like you've got some of that, but then everybody else is just more often than not coming at it from a completely different angle. So I was curious, as you were writing this, I wonder, did you ever feel like, am I bringing too much of my own theological work that I've already done in my head to this, rather than just letting the story be the story?
Yeah, I mean that's really kind of, tell you what, I don't want to hear it right now, but that's something that a reader like you would have to answer. I didn't feel that for myself. Like I said, readers have mentioned that. I've not marketed it as a faith book, so most of my reviewers, even independent reviews I got from blogs stuff, were not faith based places. So they point out like there's some faith in here. Like they're telling their readers that there's stuff. Generally speaking, it's been well received. That it didn't. That it wasn't a barrier to someone finishing the book, so to speak. I probably did more theological reflection in some stories than some readers wanted, but so far it hasn't been a negative reception. But one of my readers, who's actually a good friend of mine, referred to it as sort of philosophical parables. And so I think that's probably even more accurate. It's these little vignettes around exploring really complex realities of the human experience that are relevant to today in the context of stories. And so, I people seem to not be bothered by them, but yeah, they're absolutely a way of, for me, to try to make sense of, and hopefully helpful for other people to make sense of complicated ideas. I mean, stories are the way that we do that more than anything else. It's certainly the example we're given in Jesus with parables. So whether it's religious, not every story in there is religious, but I think all of them tend to be fairly philosophical, which would include religion, in regards to dealing with some bigger ideas in the context of stories. Thankfully, what people have said so far, which, people should get the book and tell me what you think, have been that it's still very character driven. That people feel like, even though it's dealing with some big ideas, everything from, I'm processing racism, ableism, social media, hyperconnection. There's just a variety of things that we're trying to wrestle with in this. I did try to honor the characters, and what I think makes it more a science fiction book than a Christian book is that it doesn't attempt to proselytize anyone.
Right.
And that's the problem with Christian fiction, really, is it's not really respecting the character. It's trying to convert the reader, and that really is kind of, it pulls the reader out of the story is what it does. And then like, what's the point of reading a story if you get pulled out of it? So as writers, you're trying to keep people in the story as much as possible. And so in my setting, what I was trying to do is it'd be authentic. So the problems that we're wrestling with are problems that the main characters have with their world, and trying to be honest about the motivations and the struggles that they're experiencing. And I can't imagine that every story was a glowing success in that regard, but hopefully more than not were.
Yeah. Well, I want to be clear that I've only read so far the first couple of stories myself, and I don't think that it comes across in any sort of a negative way. I've picked up on some of the cues and the themes here and there, but I was almost more asking. I often find that much of the spirituality of video games, and I don't know if this is like because of the new age spirituality that might be more popular in like California and certain sects of wherever video game developers may find themselves, but often it comes with like a very Buddhist tendency. Some are more overt than others. There is one in particular that I think of. We played it as one of our pixel pilgrimages here at Checkpoint, called Everhood. And literally in Everhood, you meet a Buddha. Like there is a happy Buddha that shows up in your game. And constantly throughout the game, it is like questioning the truth and saying, would you like to know like a truth of the universe that you can experience? And so like, it's so overt. It happens so often. But it proves credence to those stories. It doesn't serve as a distraction. But I do think Christianity is unique in the sense that it does often lean into, like most Christian video games have, that proselytizing element. Instead of just letting the story be the story and letting the spirituality play within it, they distract from it.
Well, proselytizing is like the great irony of Christianity, because it's just, especially in today's world, just doesn't work. If you want to convert people's minds, you got to stop trying to. I mean, this is like the backwards way of the world. It's just how life works, is stop trying to. Proselytizing operates from the assumption that you can change people. And it's just, so I'm trying to tap into like more universal things. Firefly, though, is a good example of religion. Right. There's a priest in that is really kind of a fun thing. One of the things that unlocked it for me was Ancillary Justice, which is a phenomenal science fiction book, award-winning science fiction book. And it plays with science fiction version of religion, maybe close to Buddhism or something similar or not. I'm not sure. I don't remember now, but very its own brand of spirituality. And I was reading that just thinking, this is so interesting, because this is just the backdrop for the storytelling. And having grown up in kind of a hyper evangelical Christian world where there's a lot of Christian fiction, and even required to read some of it, to read something that just had spirituality and religion as sort of part of the culture, was refreshing. And so I think in this collection of short stories is really a version of Christianity, a future version of Christianity that's made up. A very inclusive version, open-minded version, is meant to be just part of the cultural fabric that some of the people are, the stream that some of the people are swimming in, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, definitely trying to make some points, and ultimately, challenging people to think about what it means to love neighbor. I would say is probably one of the major themes. Especially when life is complicated or things don't make sense, while still being true to the characters, who are never perfect, who never have it all figured out, who are struggling to figure out world. And I think the hope that I'm writing about is this belief that I have that, my wife's like, it's the end of the world, we're never coming back from this. Like, she's very much like, we are living in dystopia. And I was like, I try to have a broader, slightly more hopeful view of, yeah, we don't know how AI is going to impact society, the ways it's impacted society. Science fiction aren't even predicting, correctly. And we don't know how technology is going to impact. We don't know how wars or rumors of wars are going to impact the future. But um, I think humans have traditionally found a way to make sense of it and to still be human in the midst of it. And that's really kind of what I was wrestling with in this book is as things change and people travel space or time travel or a variety of other science fiction tropes, like what does it mean to be human in the midst of that?
Yeah, that's what I'm approaching it with personally. I think that's my topic that I'm most curious about in this lane. I really liked the game Cyberpunk 2077 for this reason. I am so curious about transhumanism and about the like augmentation of humanity. And I feel like, especially in this weird era of AI where we are being like forced to reckon with the inhumanity or the humanity of this thing. Um, I feel like every other week, either the New Yorker or New York Magazine or the NY Times or whatever is writing about relationships. I just listened to a podcast from Esther Perel about relationships and AI. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like everybody's talking about these relationships and the trauma that it causes, the harm that it causes, but then also the knownness that people are experiencing from this phenomenon. And like, I have my stances that I've written on. Like I have my lines in the sand that I'm trying my best.
Wrote about this.
I wanted to lay a line in the sand about what I think the truth of transhumanism is and where we stop, where technology becomes something different and where it doesn't. But like that's what I'm approaching this with, and I'm super curious to see what sparks in the ideas you're presenting.
No, well, and I'm reading a great book right now by a professor, and I forget his name, but the book is basically how did science fiction get it wrong and where are we actually headed? And so it's if you like science fiction or futurism, it's a great book. I think it's the Skeptic's Guide to the Future is what it's called. And so he's talking about vintage science fiction and how they really missed the point on some of the ways technology, like we still don't have floating cars, like, and here's why, here's the physics of why that's not going to work anytime soon. But here's some other things they got right. And here's what people are writing now. And here's where it's actually headed. And I mean, when you talk about integrating technology into the human body, once we're able to have robotics that can communicate two-way with the brain, it's going to be a totally different game. I mean, right now they can sort of subtly have a brain tell a robotic arm what to do, but it's not two-way. And once you can also then feel from the robotic arm, so you got the sensors going to the brain and the brain sending sensors to the robotic arm. What's crazy is the brain is such a really flexible, it's the most flexible organ. It just adapts to whatever is happening. He says like, hey, if you wanted a third arm in the future, you'll be able to have it and your brain will just adapt to it. Okay, well, like, that's actually in the realm of possibility in the near future. Not right away, but we're on our way there. So obviously that raises a lot of different questions theologically and philosophically and ethically, but I do like the idea and the reminder that your brain just sort of adjusts to what it's being given. And that's actually a really reminder for me as I serve a lot of people in trauma. So then I just take it from a pastoral standpoint, like your brain will adjust, and it adjusted to the trauma you experienced or the heartbreak that you've experienced or the chaos of the world that you've experienced. It can adjust to something better as well. And so that's, writing stories of hope, I think, are really important for me in that regard.
Oh, well, that sparks an interesting flip of the switch for me. So I asked earlier about how your faith influenced your writing. Reverse it. How do you think now on the other end of this writing, or just anything you've written, how does that impact your faith life or your sermon life or your pastoral life? What does that do?
Well, storytelling is meaning making. It's how we make sense of the world. So for me, stories are everything. Stories are, our faith is a story. And you can get into the critical analysis of what actually happened And as soon as you start doing that, you're missing the whole point of the fact that Christianity is a story. The gospel is a story event. And so at the heart of what we do is we look at the world, and if we can't make sense of it, that's where all of the mental health comes from. But if we find ways to wire connections and to make sense of it in healthy ways, which is storytelling, that's how we learn. I know what I think about it like this. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, that's fine. But you know how many different people interpret what it means to love your neighbor? Some people would say, love your neighbor, so lock them up if they're illegal, because that's what love is sometimes mean. I'm like, okay, you can interpret love your neighbor however you want. It's only when you read stories of Jesus loving their neighbor, or other Christians, stories that I've read of other Christians of like sacrificial loving their neighbors, that I'm like, it's through those stories that I get a glimpse of what it means. Something that connects with my soul. I'm like, oh, that's what it means to love my neighbor. Now I'm making sense of this phrase that we throw around. And so the stories I hear about what it means to love your neighbor is going to influence how I love my neighbor. And the stories other people hear about how loving your neighbor means being really harsh to them and telling them they're going to go to hell if they don't believe, or whatever it is. Those stories influence how they view what it means to love your neighbor. The same is true for everything. What does it mean to be a person of integrity? What does it mean to have hope? What does it mean to love people? What does it mean to be a good human? What does it mean to be a healthy a person who's masculine, identifies as a male but isn't patriarchal? What does any of that mean? Usually the way we make sense of it is hearing stories, either real or imagined, and it gives us glimpses into it. So for me, I think theology is best expressed through the stories we tell. And my wife and I work with a variety of people who've really experienced difficulty, and I had the chance to work with some people who are coming out of sober living houses, coming out of recovery. Many of them have either spent time on the street or in prison, usually both. And one of the things that I try to tell people is a story is a character who overcomes conflict to get what they want, and either they do or they don't. And that determines whether it's a comedy or tragedy. That's oversimplification of a story, but it's part of it. But the thing is a good story does involve conflict, and the greater the conflict, the better the story, the deeper the conflict. And so that is another way where I find hope in stories, where when life is really difficult and overwhelming, and I feel like quitting, when I feel like throwing it in, I have to remind myself that if I zoom out a little bit, this is just the dark night of the soul for the story that I'm in, and it's essential for the story to be powerful. And the more darker that night is, the better the story is really going to be. And that, once again, gives me a little bit of hope. It's the gospel story. Jesus dying on the cross, dark night of the soul, but it isn't where the story ends. It's the story we see over and over again. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
sure.
For me, how we think about our life is what we mean by storytelling. And storytelling is, is as old as humanity. I would say it's probably one of the things that separates humans from sort of the evolutionary line, is not even using tools, right? Because other species can use tools and things like that. It's really our ability to make meaning and to interpret the world through stories and allow those stories to shape each other. The question is what are the stories we're telling?
Yeah.
And how are they changing us? Which, isn't always good stories.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that I was going to bring up next. Was we have this recurring argument that happens in our Checkpoint spaces. So one of the things that we do at Checkpoint is we do these things called nerdy sermons, where I will explore media and present some kind of learning, some kind of truth, some kind of something from it. And then I'll draw out a similar or contradicting or something that meshes well from scripture. And then I'll present the two of them kind of in tandem and say, isn't this interesting that like we can learn something from this story and apply it to our lives? And some of the pushback we've gotten along the way was like we did one on Cult of the Lamb, which is a game where you're literally making a cult. And people were like, oh, well, Christians can't talk about that. Christians can't tell that story. We can't experience that story. Or we talked about one that was particularly controversial back in the day of like Turning Red, which was a random Disney movie that made people mad for some reason. And so we talked about that. And we have never like ventured far from whatever we want to talk about. Like we just allow ourselves to experience any story. And so where I've landed is very much the place of like, I think that storytelling itself is an act of creativity, which I think we get our creativity as an echo from our Imago Dei, from our like image of God. If God is creator, we create as our little example of like, we're looking at you, we're experiencing it because we were made this way to do this. And so I think any story is at like a base level worth interrogating and worth discerning and like meeting at its level. And I think that there's like this current trope right now of pretty problematic people not reading fiction, not reading stories, only reading self-help books if they read at all. And I think that our like this reticence to experience stories that aren't appropriate or that aren't right or that aren't what we deem as being like thematically, I don't know, whatever word we want to put to it, Christian or pure or anything like that. Like we miss so much of the capacity for good stories. And so that's very much what I thought of whenever you were working through your thought there. I want to allow a little bit of time here. Do know, folks, that if you want to know more about the book, that will be delivered with our book of the month for March. So do be sure to sign up for that for the next couple of days. I saw a question from Lizzie a while ago that was like, if we've already ordered a checkbox, can we add that book now? Yes, you should be able to still log in on Planning Center and add in items. So that is still something that you should be able to go do. Make sure to do that. But I want to give just a quick second to talk about the other work that you do in regards to encouraging writers. And so you mentioned a little bit about your nonprofit work and writing association work. So I wondered if you wanted to say anything about that calling or that passion or what you hope to get through that work.
Yeah, Ohio Writers Association is an organization that supports emerging and professional writers with ties to Ohio. So anyone who's lived, worked, played in Ohio, we're pretty loose with it. But anyone who's engaged in a creative endeavor knows that there's a couple of pieces that are essential. One is it's very lonely, especially writing. You're not working with a team. It's one thing I miss about film production, even though I made really, really not great quality short films in college. It involved like 30 people all volunteering their time, hanging out for days on end. And that was awesome. This is what college is all about. I love that. Writing is much more a lonely endeavor. And sometimes it takes years to publish something. Usually it takes years to publish it, especially your first one. And which means very few people even reading it. Like at least indie musicians can go play at a bar, but you can't go to a bar and read your novel for people to experience it. And if you put it out too early, publishers might not be interested in it because anyways, it's very lonely. So building community is really important, but also improving your craft, receiving feedback, and encouragement. The greatest hindrance to people writing is confidence. And so creating spaces where people are learning how to improve their craft, but are encouraged to keep writing. We just had an author present a workshop on editing, and he made the brilliant observation that I agree with, and now I'll be stealing for the rest of my life, is all of whatever feedback you get, it should always want you to keep writing, because that's the biggest barrier to any creative endeavor is quitting. And so whatever feedback we try to give people in our peer critiques, it's meant to encourage them to keep going, because that's the only way you're ever going to get better, or that's the only way you're ever going to get published, etc. So yeah, our organization tries to provide spaces for people to learn about the craft, to be able to give and receive peer feedback, which we developed. We inherited a model for feedback that I find is keeps feedback healthy. So if anyone ever wants to talk about how to give and receive feedback in creative endeavors, I think we have a model that would stand up to some of the best. And then we do some small publishing as well, where we'll publish people's short stories and poems about every other year through anthologies, giving people an opportunity to be published and also to experience the publishing process. which really also contributed to that confidence factor of feeling like
Mhm.
you do have something to say and that it's worth saying, which is really huge. So yeah, we have. I love the community. So many diverse. We have people who write nonfiction, fiction, horror. Um, we have a phenomenal board of directors right now. The president or the executive director of the Horror Writers Association of America, which is like the National Association for Horror Writers, is on our board.
Wow.
Always offers really, because that's a professional association. We're just a community association, so always offers really good insight to help guide our organization. And yeah, creating a space where people are encouraged to be creative and to keep going is kind of a big part of it. And then there's some things that we know, just craft stuff that you can learn. So we try to bring in speakers to do that as well. But honestly, starting or revamping a writers group, running a nonprofit or running a church, they're all basically the same thing if you think about it. And it's just all about creating space for people to be in community
Mm.
together and to help each other move forward in life and meet the goals that they have. Um, so, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a chance to shout that out just because I think it's cool work. I always like the idea of supporting creatives. As a creative myself, I want to see more of that work being done. And I think that the church, whether it's happening in a church or whether it's just happening through people within the church who are passionate about it and go out and lead initiatives like this, I just think it's great. Very much in our blood here at Checkpoint for
Yeah.
game developers who are going through crisis after crisis of layoffs and all those situations. That's
Yeah.
originally how this podcast started, was like entering into those conversations as just a hope-filled presence of like, we see you, we hear you. You're not just a news blurb, but you're like a real breathing human being. Yeah.
Well, and I'll say if there's anyone who's got a creative project and they don't know how to get started, or if they have a writing project, they don't know how to get published. Like I do author coaching and I love sitting down with authors and I'm trained in coactive coaching. So I use that in author space and love to just sit down with authors, talk through the process, ask good questions. And then when they want, offer advice or give some ideas for next steps and stuff. And anything that I've experienced in the writing space, publishing space, I'd love to be able to pass on. So if anyone ever wants to take that novel, give that novel a try that you've been thinking about,
Very cool.
love to work with you on it.
Yeah, we had a little community for a while there that did the NaNoWriMo. I know that's not as like kosher anymore, but that was very much in our like system as we would get together each November and do that as a group.
I love it.
Well, before we do a more official shout out to all of the places that people can find you and all the things that people can do next, let's wrap up with our final question that we do in each of these podcasts, and let us know in the chat if you're also wanting to answer this question. How did you checkpoint this week? And what we mean by that question is, how did you show up meaningfully online this week? What was something that you did that forged real relationships and real connections online? I recently started a raised garden as it is finally warm enough in North Carolina to do that. And so I started my raised garden, and the first place I thought to share it was in my various online communities. And several people commented back and just said how good it was to see something green. Finally, to see some greenery in this bleary winter. So that is how I have showed up online this week. If you've got one, you're welcome to share it, Joe.
Yeah, I would say for me this week is we have a Signal chat for guys in our church, and they were all chatting this week about going to the No Kings protest. Not to be controversial, but
There you go.
I was going to go. I didn't end up going. It didn't work out, but they were sharing photos and their experience, and I was encouraging them. And it's cool to be a part of a church where people are encouraged to engage in ways that make sense for them to make the world a better place, and to feel like they're giving back, and to be able to see what that experience was like for them. I would say those conversations on Signal were the most meaningful online engagement this week.
Love it. I did want to answer. I don't know if Charles Martin is still in the chat, but you did weigh in on your question there. I kind of already answered it whenever I talked a minute ago about my thoughts on creativity and on storytelling and what stories are appropriate or inappropriate to explore. We have not done a video on a book, to my knowledge. We may have. I do like Stephen King. I think that I've read several of his books and always thought that they're interesting. Some are better than others. My very first one that I remember reading all the way through was Cell, which I don't know if anyone's ever read Cell, but that is a wild book and filled with all of the King isms that people know him very well for. But I did, particularly speaking of writers on writers, I very much liked King's book on writing. That's one of the.
I was going to say that's considered the best book on writing.
Yeah, that's a legend for sure. Yeah, I'll recommend that. But yeah, I have no problem. I would have no problem tackling anything from King on a Checkpoint Nerdy Sermon. The trouble with nerdy sermons is that we try to make them super relevant and topical so that they rank well on YouTube, which is gross, but it's true. And so like we're always trying to come up with whatever is currently being talked about. I don't know the last thing I've really heard Stephen King be talked about. You know, something that did do well was Joe Hill's book, King of Sorrow, which is Stephen King's son. That was one that popped off for a little while there. And I thought about it, but I don't know. It would be hard to write on a book. There's like that Between Two Fires right now, too, that's doing pretty well. Medieval horror. There's all sorts of good books, and I love good books, but I have not written a sermon on one. Maybe someday. First was Night Shift. Very cool. Yeah, I've not read Night Shift. He has so many books, so prolific. such a writer.
Just writes.
A bonkers schedule. Lizzie checkpointed this week by making up Slay the Productivity with T-Bone, where we played Slay the Spire 2, but set rules to help us not only have fun playing the game, also get some things done, got a good amount of cleaning done. There we go. Love to hear it. Any tips and tricks are what this ADHD brain loves. So yeah, that sounds like a pretty good plan. Go ahead and publish that, Lizzie. We'll come up with a Slay the Productivity system. Very fun. And yeah, we do not have a nerdy sermon on a musical. Is that true? Well, we have musical cartoons, but probably, yeah, not a true blue musical.
I love a good musical, though. Man.
Yeah, we have a whole musical section, and they give me a hard time because I am an not old school, but I'm like a aughts musical fan, and I have not kept up as well with modern musicals. I've still not seen Hamilton, which they give me such a hard time.
That's a good music. My wife loves that, but I just put on Come From Away the other 2 days ago. I had seen it when it first came out on Apple TV, so I just put it on because someone brought it up because they went and saw the play, and I was like, oh, I should watch that. I was like halfway through, and I was just bawling. Talk about stories of people's goodness and just loving people without anything in return. Gosh, that musical just wrecks me.
Yeah, there's some good ones out there. They're so evocative. Good stuff. All right. Well, before we do our shout out and our so longs for Checkpoint, wanted to give you a quick chance here at the end, Joe. Where can people find you? Where do you want them to find you? Better question, maybe. What would be the ways for us to keep you connected with this audience?
Yeah, well, joegraves.org is going to be the easiest. You can find a link to my Facebook, Instagram, or Substack there. You can sign up for emails if you want. So all of those are right there on the homepage. And yeah, joegraves.org. Check it out. Find me on Facebook. Give me a follow. Instagram, Joseph David Graves on Instagram. Yeah. I post about writing, religion, politics, and my life. My son. Well, when he lets me. Which right now is Rubik's Cube related. He has a pretty good 30-second Rubik's Cube. He's not quite going to win the national tournament or international tournaments at 3 seconds, but 30 seconds I thought was pretty good for solving a Rubik's Cube.
Better than I could do, that's for sure. That's awesome.
Better than I could do.
Very cool. All right, well, lots of good places, and hopefully we'll have you back in the Checkpoint spaces before too long, see what we can continue talking about. I think that this book will be an interesting one for the Checkpoint folks to read through, and maybe once we've read through it, we can bring you back in for a post-book discussion.
Love to talk about it. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right. We're going to wrap up the show here, folks, with a quick shout out. So, shout out to all of our boosters and supporters that are subscribed to us on Twitch and on YouTube. We're still looking for Hype Crew. So, if you want to subscribe there, you can do that over on YouTube. And then a special shout out, as always, to our patrons over on YouTube, Twilight27, Bweesh, and DGC. We appreciate everybody for supporting us financially so we can continue to make this show and sustain this ministry. And with that, of course, we are going to end the show as we do with every single thing that we do here at Checkpoint. And that is with saying the 3 things that we believe to be true about every single one of you out there. Whether you believe in God, don't believe in God, go to church, don't go to church, hate God, hate church, no matter what, we still believe these things. We believe, number 1, God loves you, really, really loves you. Number 2, we love you. We want community with you. That's what we're doing here. And number 3, that you, yes, you matter. You're a person of sacred worth. The world is a better place. Why? Because you are in it. Folks, thank you for being here. Appreciate you tuning in with the show. Another extra special shout out to Joe. Appreciate you being here, and we will catch you all around our Discord later on. Until next time, bye-bye.